Hello, everybody. Lots of big news to get into today. Some bombshell documents showing that two of the 9/11 hijackers were CIA recruits. I'll give you all the details of that. It is kind of complicated and intricate, so important to dig into that one. Also, we got leaks that have come out spelling the end of Ukraine. To put it in the words of Consortium News, we have the continued scourge of peace that is breaking out. It is growing like a slime mold of peace that the U.S. empire is furious about. That I have new updates on that. More French worker protests, and it's just the best. I gotta show you this video. Just the best kind of protests that you can have. All of that. Plus, you got Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon fired on the same day. We'll be talking about that shit. And also, I'm going to be using this hour for a bit of a fundraiser to get rid of medical debt. Anybody who donates, you can donate on youtube.com/moment of clarity. You can donate on Rumble. There's a $ next to the comment box if you're logged in. If you can donate on either of those two places, I am giving all of that money to RIP medical debt. I'm also donating 100 of my own dollars. So even if no one donates, we've already erased $10,000 of medical debt. I will be talking more about that as we continue to go. And I know that right now you're going, Lee, you just said you're donating $100. Why is that $10,000 of medical debt erased? I'm going to explain that coming up. But let's start out with the amazing documents that have just come to light that I don't think you're going to see on the mainstream media. I don't think you're going to get a lot of this on your NBC News, nightly news. This is from Gray Zone. It's a bombshell court filing. They say 9/11 hijackers were CIA recruits. A newly released court filing raises grave questions about the relationship between Alex Station, which is was a CIA unit set up to track al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden, which they did a great job, and his associates, and two 9/11 hijackers leading up to the attacks, which was subject to a cover-up at the highest levels of the FBI. So this involved both the FBI and the CIA. In multiple regards. The filing is a 21-page declaration by Don Canestraro, a lead investigator for the Office of Military Commissions, the legal body overseeing the cases of the 9/11 defendants. And for any of you, I know this is a bit of a Rorschach, and there's some of you right now that are going, see, Bush was in the towers with napalm. I knew it. And then there's other of you going, this doesn't mean anything because the CIA recruited someone doesn't mean anything. I'm going to dig into the multiple different ways this could be viewed, and what it could mean, what it's most likely to mean, etc. in a few minutes. It summarizes classified government discovery disclosures and private interviews that he conducted with anonymous high-ranking CIA and FBI officials. Many agents who spoke to Canestraro headed up Operation Encore, the Bureau's aborted long-running probe in Saudi government connections to the 9/11 attack. Oh, why are they allowed to abort that, but no woman in America is allowed to have an abortion anymore? Huh? CIA, FBI, they can just abort whatever they want. Why is that? Why is that fair? Why do they still have access to the pill? And yet, if you're in a red state, you can't get the thing. They CIA, FBI, they still have rights to their own body. They can abort whatever they want. It's not fair. Anyway, despite conducting multiple lengthy interviews with a range of witnesses, producing hundreds of pages of evidence, formally investigating several Saudi officials, and launching a grand jury to probe a Riyadh-run U.S.-based support network for the hijackers, Encore was abruptly terminated, aka aborted, in 2016. The Riyadh-run U.S.-based support network for the hijackers. Canestraro's investigation concluded that at least two 9/11 hijackers had been recruited either knowingly or unknowingly into a joint CIA-Saudi intelligence operation, which may have gone awry. So you're seeing again and again that there was clearly coordination between the CIA and Saudi intelligence. We know that Saudi intelligence knew a lot about what was going on in 9/11. In late 1999, with the system blinking red about an imminent large-scale al-Qaeda terror attack inside the U.S., the CIA and NSA were closely monitoring an operational cadre within an al-Qaeda cell that included the Saudi nationals Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midar. The pair would purportedly go on to hijack American Airlines Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon on 9/11. On January 15th, Hazmi and Midar entered the U.S. through this is where it gets pretty ridiculous. And I mean, not that it's not true. I mean ridiculous as in the insanity that the CIA and Saudi intelligence were involved in. U.S. through Los Angeles International Airport just weeks after the foiled Millennium Plot. Omar al-Bayoumi, a Saudi government ghost employee, immediately met them at an airport restaurant. After a brief conversation, Bayoumi helped them find an apartment near his in San Diego. He co-signed on their lease. He set up bank accounts. He gifted them $1,500 towards their rent. The three would have multiple contacts moving forward. Bayoumi alleged his run-in with the two would-be hijackers was a mere happenstance. You know how it is. Look, folks, this happened to me dozens of times. You run into somebody at the airport, you talk to them for about 15, 20 minutes, and then you co-sign on their rent and give them $1,500 and create a bank account for them. I don't, why are people acting like that's unusual? I cannot even tell you the number of times. Sometimes I don't even, it's just like someone's next to me in like a stall, a public bathroom stall, and I just yell through the stalled door. Hey, I see you got nice shoes there. That's all I can see of you. But do you need someone to co-sign in your apartment and give you $1,500 and start a bank account for you and show you a place to live? Because I like your shoes. Happens to me all the time. The Bureau disagreed, concluding Bayoumi was a Saudi spy. What? Who handled a number of al-Qaeda operatives in the U.S. They also considered there to be a 50-50 chance he, and by extension Riyadh, had detailed advanced knowledge of the 9/11 attacks. A Bureau special agent dubbed CS3 in the document stated Bayoumi's contact with the hijackers and support thereafter was done at the behest of the CIA through the Saudi intelligence service. Alex Station's explicit purpose was to recruit al-Hazmi and al-Midar via a liaison relationship with the assistance of Riyadh's General Intelligence Directorate. So stated that Bayoumi's contact with the hijackers, so this guy who just happened to run into these hijackers at the cafe in the airport the moment they arrived and give them an apartment and then co-sign on it and give them $1,500. He did that at the behest of the CIA and Saudi intelligence. CS10, a CIA case officer within Alex Station, concurred with the proposition that Hazmi and Midar enjoyed a relationship with the CIA through Bayoumi and was baffled that the unit was tasked with attempting to penetrate al-Qaeda in the first place. So, well, a little bit more, and then I'll say the multiple ways this could be viewed. Another of Canestro's sources, a former FBI agent who went by CS23, testified that after 9/11, FBI headquarters and its San Diego field office quickly learned of Bayoumi's affiliation with Saudi intelligence and subsequently the existence of the CIA's operation to recruit Hazmi and Midar. However, senior FBI officials suppressed investigations into these matters. They suppressed the investigations. CS23 alleged furthermore that Bureau agents testifying before the joint inquiry were instructed not to reveal the full extent of Saudi involvement with al-Qaeda. And this is a key part here. On August 23rd, so this is days before 9/11, they stumbled upon, the FBI stumbled upon an electronic communication from FBI headquarters which identified Hazmi and Midar and noted they were in the U.S. CS-12 then contacted the FBI analyst within Alex Station who authored the communication. The conversation quickly became heated, with the analyst ordering them to delete the memo immediately as they were not authorized to view it. So this shows that higher-ups in the FBI did not want it to come out that this guy was connected, that the would-be hijackers were connected to Bayumi and were in the U.S. And you have to ask yourself, why would they not want that to come out? This is before 9/11, so you can't say after 9/11, you can say it's just the U.S. protecting Saudi Arabia because they're our ally and the petrodollar is sunk without them. So anyway, I'll get into that in a second. In the days immediately after the 9/11 attacks, CS-12 and other New York-based FBI agents participated in another conference call with Bureau headquarters. During the conversation, they learned Hazmi and Midar were named on Flight 77's manifest. One analyst on the line ran the pair's name through commercial databases, quickly finding them and their home address listed in San Diego's local phone directory. It turned out they had been living with an FBI informant. So two of the would-be hijackers are connected to a CIA-connected guy. In fact, he sets them up with their apartment in the U.S. They're living with an FBI informant. And when it is revealed by one of these agents that they find out some of this, the FBI higher-ups, FBI analysts within Alex Station, which was a CIA setup. So I don't quite understand how the FBI and the CIA are working together on this, but Alex Station was a CIA setup. And they told him to get rid of the memo and say they didn't view it, say they never saw it. So a lot going on there to unpack. Now, like this stuff should be, there's a lot of ways that you could take this, and this stuff should be heavily analyzed if we had any kind of legitimate media in our country, even just slightly, even if they just had like just a collarbone of legitimacy, just a little piece of their body was somehow legitimate, you would have at least an analysis of what this could mean, what it might mean, etc. But you don't have any of that. You will never have any of this discussion on mainstream media. But so the multiple ways of how you could take this is, one is that U.S. government straight up taking part in 9/11. That is one way to believe this, is U.S. government just like, yeah, let's knock down some buildings, full on taking a role in 9/11. A second way to view it is that U.S. intelligence knew a lot, and clearly a lot, if they have this many connections to hijackers. U.S. intelligence knew a lot. Obviously, we also have known for 20 years about the analysis, the report that was given to Bush in the month before 9/11 that said bin Laden determined to attack within the U.S. So we know they knew a lot. So that's not questionable. But so you could take this latest document as the U.S. knew a lot about what was happening, but they wanted something to happen so that they wanted something to happen in the U.S. that they could use to invade Iraq and do all these other things, the 7 countries in 5 years that General Wesley Clark told us about, etc. They wanted something to happen in the U.S., and so the easiest thing to do to not have their fingerprints on a full-on false flag is to just let something happen that they knew was going to happen. And there's a lot of evidence to easily say that was the case, that they knew something was going to happen, they knew something large was going to happen, and they were like, yeah, just let it go because it'll be great for us to be able to use that to invade Iraq. And then the third way to take this, which is, I think, the way, if you ever saw any mention of this on mainstream media or anywhere else, or if the U.S. Government were to ever address these documents in a real way, they would say, they would probably try and say, oh, there was a lot of slip-ups. Oh, God, man, do we wish we could have that one. If we could just have that play over again. Oh, We did slip up on that one. That's the third way you could take this, is that U.S. intelligence was so breathtakingly inept that despite having many FBI informants and CIA recruits in the mix of the hijackers, they still had no idea what was happening. And then they covered it up after the fact because, much of these documents, the reason we're only getting these documents now is they were fully redacted until just like a week ago, or recently. So the third way to take this is they're breathtakingly inept. And then they covered it up after the fact because the U.S. has, hopefully you guys know by now, a longstanding, ally relationship with Saudi Arabia, but it's more than just allies. The moment Saudi Arabia, if they were to drop the petrodollar in OPEC, then we would be fucked. And so the U.S. is beyond just allies. We're allies with a lot of countries, but with Saudi Arabia, they can do anything. They can chop up Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. They can chop up a Washington Post journalist, throw him in a barbecue pit, and the U.S. still won't do anything to them. That's the level that we are indebted or under the thumb of Saudi Arabia. So after the fact, they run around. They flew the rest of the bin Laden family out of the country. Most of you know that. In the days after 9/11, when flights were not allowed in the air, they flew them out of the country. And so that's the third way to take it. Is, oh my God, these guys are so inept. Jeez, if they just looked at that memo. I don't think that third option, the one I just said, is very likely. They're inept. They're inept, but in other way. They're not so inept that they would have all these connections to hijackers and everything else and just had no idea what they were up to. But I think there's a lot of good evidence for the U.S. empire knew something very large, and who knows how specified, how specific the information was that they had, but clearly knew something very large was going to happen. And these documents just add to that. That it was in many ways fostered to allow something massive to happen. And this is an article at the Gray Zone, which you can read. But again, you will get none of this on mainstream media. They won't touch this with I was going to say 10-foot pole. I'd say 20-foot pole. I'll go 20. I'll go 20-foot pole with this one. Easy. All right. So I do have other topics, including the leaks that show it's the end for Ukraine, as Consortium News is phrasing it. I'm getting into that in 1 minute, but I wanted to raise money today to get rid of medical debt, to erase basically it's fundraising to erase random people's medical debt. People are suffering in this country, and by the way, I have no dog in this race other than to help people. I don't work for RIP medical debt. I don't get anything from them. I won't get anything from the donations that come in from you. So there is no financial reason for me to be doing this. I just think it'd be a good thing to do because so many people are suffering in this country. And I thought I'd give you, before we get to those Ukraine leaks, I thought I'd give you some of the examples. And by the way, there's two ways to donate. You can donate if you are logged in at youtube.com/momentofclarity. I believe there's a dollar symbol at the bottom of next to the comment box. And same at rumble.com/Lee Camp. There's a dollar symbol next to the comment box. It should say there. You should be able to click that and donate if you would like. And the way it works is that 10 times the amount. Oh, sorry, not 10 times, 100 times. Yeah, 100 times. The amount you donate is actually erased because this medical debt gets sold on the debt market. So it gets sold. Thank you, Southern Sass, for starting us off. It gets sold on the debt market. So it gets sold for pennies on the dollar. So people, other debt collection agencies will buy this debt, and they'll then go after the people that so-called owe it. So let's say someone owes $1,000 of medical debt. That will be sold to this debt collector for $100 or less, maybe $1. And they then run after this person and harass them to try and get money from them. It's a phenomenally sick system. But so a way to kind of kneecap this system, a way to throw a wrench in the gears of this system is to erase that medical debt, buy it up and erase it for 1/100th of the cost. So a $100 donation gets rid of $10,000 of medical debt here in the United States. And just in case you need to be reminded of this, we shouldn't even have goddamn medical debt. It should not exist. It should be a thing. All the other industrial countries, all the other developed countries do not do this to people, especially not on this level. So if you guys want to donate, we already got $20. I'm going to throw in $100. So we already got $120, which, you know, I'm not good at the maths, but it's like $12,000 of medical debt erased, something like that. And yeah, even $1 gets multiplied by a huge amount. So I hope some of you will donate. I wanted to reveal some of the other aspects of this medical debt catastrophe in this country. 1 in 10 adults owe medical debt in the United States. Millions owe more than $10,000 in medical debt, which shouldn't be a thing, shouldn't even exist. Black adults, those in poor health, and people living with disabilities are more likely to carry significant medical debt. Nearly 1 in 10 adults, that's 9%, roughly 23 million people owe medical debt. This includes 11 million who owe more than $2,000 and 3 million people who owe more than $10,000. I mean, 11 million people owing more than $2,000, which I imagine, if they're poor, is kind of like an unimaginable amount of money to just have one day, just have on hand sitting around. Let's see, 23 million people. Larger shares of people in poor health and living with a disability report medical debt. People in these groups are more likely to need and receive care than people in better health and without disabilities. Among racial and ethnic groups, a larger share of Black adults, 16%, report having medical debt compared to white, 9%, Hispanic, 9%, Asian, 4%. Adults who were uninsured for more than half of the year are more likely to report medical debt than those who were insured for all or most of the year. And of course, during all of this, the insurance companies are getting breathtakingly rich because that's how Obamacare works. It just enriches the health insurance companies. Thank you, William Fitzgibbons. You just erased $5,000 of medical debt for people. Pretty awesome. I mean, it's just so wildly ridiculous that people should be suffering in this way, have this hanging over their head at all times. And of course, they're probably paying interest, so they're probably paying more than they owe. They're probably paying endlessly. Third quarter payer profit. So this is the amount of profit coming in to insurers, their record profits of this year or the last quarter. United Health Group, $5.3 billion, up over 28% from the year before. Cigna, $2.8 billion, up over 70%. Elevance Health, $1.6 billion, up over 7%. Humana, $1.2 billion, down 20%. Centene, I haven't heard of that one, $738 million, up over 26%. And Molina, $230 million, up over 60%. Uh, it's an insane amount of money. And even the one that I said was down, Humana, they still made $1.2 billion in that quarter. This is just on exploiting people. I mean, it's incredible the amount of money sucked out of the poor and those who are struggling. It's how our system works, and yet people still support this system as if it's the best we can do. It's the best we got, best we can do. Healthcare costs in the United States have increased drastically over the past several decades. This is the national health expenditure by percentage of GDP. And in 1960, it was under 5% of GDP was health expenditure. Now we're up at nearing 20%, somewhere between 15 and 20%. But it just keeps increasing at an astronomical rate. And on top of all that, the health outcomes are not very good either. Life expectancy has been on the rise in the U.S. until recently. It was 47 years in 1900s. In 1900, your life expectancy was 47 years. 68 years in 1950. That's quite a jump. By 2019, it had risen to 79 years was the life expectancy. But now it's fallen to 77 in 2020, dropped further to 76 in 2021. I believe it's still 76 in the U.S. But life expectancy, let me see if I can find if it's any different now. 77. So we've gone up a year. But if you want to know what other developed countries have, in Japan, it's 84. So we're killing our people 7 years earlier. For what? For a shitty health system? For excessive pollution? So this is why I want to, some of the reasons I want to erase medical debt, and I want your help to do it. And so any donations that come in, again, you can donate at youtube.com/moment of clarity. If you click on this live stream and then click the $sign, you can also donate on Rumble with the $sign at the next to the comments there, rumble.com/Lee Camp. And your donation will be multiplied times about 100 to in terms of the amount of medical debt that it deletes, that it erases. And I'm going to throw in $100 as well. So, but all right, let's keep moving on. Keep moving on. With the leaks that show that Ukraine, that this is spelling the end for Ukraine, and that is how Consortium News is describing it. Leaked U.S. intelligence. Well, I'll skip down to this. A Washington Post headline last week said U.S. doubts Ukraine counteroffensive will yield big gains. Leaked documents say. And for those who don't know, this, we'll mention this in a minute, but this goes against everything that the mainstream media has been pushing to us about the proxy war in Ukraine. The U.S. has been pushing the idea that, Ukraine's doing great. They're going to win this thing and all this stuff. And, those of us who want to actually see peace and not see an endless proxy war have been screaming that both sides need to sit down to a peace table immediately and stop bombing each other. And the U.S. is saying, yes, that is what they should do after we bomb each other for a long, long time. The story, so this is from the Washington Post, though, now from these leaked documents that have come out. And if you watched my previous live streams, you heard me talk about, trying to figure out how legitimate these live streams are. How legitimate these, sorry, did I say live streams? How legitimate these leaks are. And the thing that I found very odd is that these leaks are being heavily covered by the mainstream media. But now it has become clear, as you get more and more evidence to reveal where it is they stand, that the leaks seem very legitimate. There's been nothing that has proven that they're false. But the reason it's getting so much coverage by the mainstream media is so that the mainstream media can channel the attention to the leaks to the portions of the leaks that are less harmful to U.S. empire. So I think that's pretty clear now. Initially, it was like these possibly fake leaks. Like, why is the mainstream media covering these? Because in a real story that harms the U.S. empire, the U.S. mainstream media will generally try and ignore as much as they can. Just ignore it. And you can look at the Nord Stream pipeline as an example. They've basically talked about it zero. These leaks have been talked about a lot, but I think it's because they're trying to channel our attention, America's attention, away from the portion of the leaks that are harmful to the U.S. empire's aims. This story, though, in the Washington Post admits that the Western media audience has been misled about the course of the war, that essentially what mainstream media has been reporting about Ukraine has been a pack of lies, namely that Ukraine is winning the war and is poised to launch an offensive that will lead to final victory. The piece makes clear the leaked documents show the long-planned Ukrainian offensive will fail miserably, a marked departure from the Biden administration's public statements about the vitality of Ukraine's military. Oh, those fresh-faced Nazis. They are. They always have their haircuts trimmed really nice and tight. Nice and tight on the haircuts for those Nazis. So that's why we know they're going to win, because they always got the nice and tight haircuts. That's that's why we know that it makes sense for us to fund and arm them, because they got some serious haircuts going on. The piece makes clear the leaked documents show the long-planned Ukrainian offensive will fail miserably. Quote, a marked departure from the Biden administration's public statements about the vitality of Ukraine's military. In other words, U.S. officials have been lying about the state of the war to the public and to reporters who have faithfully reported their every word without a hint of skepticism. The Post said, as if it's a bad thing, that the leaks will likely embolden critics who feel the United States and NATO should do more to push for a negotiated settlement to the conflict. It would embolden critics of the United States. No, we can't have that. You know, we're an incredibly powerful empire, but if a critic is emboldened, how will we sustain? And the other thing that I think is going on here, the article doesn't get into this, but is that there is now a larger degree of rifts, a larger rift opening between the DC elite, the Beltway group. Some of them want to wrap up the proxy war in Ukraine because they believe it's draining the U.S. and that these sanctions have boomeranged, and others want to continue the proxy war in Ukraine. And you can see this even with Henry Kissinger, right? 99-year-old sack of flesh, war criminal Henry Kissinger has said that the war in Ukraine needs to end. He said it's bad for the U.S. empire. Thank you, Patchouli Diver, for erasing $1,000 of someone's medical debt that is suffering out there. Really appreciate it. So anyway, there's a rift opening in the Beltway crew, and I think that's why some of them are highlighting these leaks. Others don't want to talk about these leaks. But anyway, the consortium article continues. Writing in the Uber establishment Foreign Affairs, former State Department official Richard Haas and Charles Kupchan, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, write that it is difficult to feel sanguine about where the war is headed. The title of their article was "The West Needs a New Strategy in Ukraine, a plan for getting from the battlefield to the negotiating table." And they said, quote, "The best path forward is a sequenced two-pronged strategy aimed at first bolstering Ukraine's military capability, and then when the fighting season winds down late this year, the fighting season." Don't you love that? As if murdering people is, you always have the murder playoffs in the fall, and then you get to the murder Super Bowl, the fighting season. Jesus Christ, what kind of psychopaths? You're like, fighting season will wind down. It gets a little chilly, and we don't want to be out there murdering all those folks when it's chilly out. Fighting season winds down late this year, ushering Moscow and Kiev from the battlefield to the negotiating table. Yeah, or you could have just allowed those negotiations in the first place, you shitheads. The article does not mention the leaks. So now we've switched from Foreign Affairs magazine back to Consortium. The article does not mention the leaks, though it was published after the disclosures made clear that the Ukrainian offensive intended to break through Russia's land bridge to Crimea would fail. So these leaks are spelling bad things for Ukraine and for the ongoing U.S. proxy war in Ukraine. And, while the mainstream media is covering these leaks, very few of them, although he does take some quotes from the Washington Post, very few of them are revealing this aspect of just how thoroughly it seems that Ukraine has been beaten. But on top of that, all of this could have been avoided if you had just had negotiations back in April, a year ago, when they were stopped by Boris Johnson and the U.S. Anyway, but the U.S., we want our wars to continue. We want to have endless war, and we want a lot of people to die because we are a sociopathic empire that enjoys destroying lives. So there's that. All right, so we talked for a minute about Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon. What a nice group they are. Oh, by the way, for those of you joining late, any donations are going to RIP Medical Debt, which will multiply the effect of your donation by 100. So you donate $100, you erase $10,000 of medical debt that is destroying someone's life here in the United States. And I'm going to donate $100 as well. I am not getting anything from this. I am not getting any money. I'm not working for RIP Medical Debt. I just thought this would be a nice thing to do during these live streams to work together. As long as we're all here, work together and help some other people. So, Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon were both fired on the same day, which is hilarious. It's because the two of them. And I'm not going to spend much time on this because there's not that much to say. But these are two corporate pieces of human garbage. For those of you who liked, and I know there are some leftists out there who liked a few segments that Tucker Carlson did. I myself, even though I reminded everyone he's human garbage, Don Lemon also human garbage, by the way, but we can talk about that as well. I myself, a few weeks ago, highlighted a segment that Tucker Carlson did on the CIA connections to the death of Kennedy. And I talked about how important that segment is. But I also reminded everyone that Tucker Carlson is a piece of human garbage because he absolutely is in all ways. He may be anti-war on a couple of issues. He may have had someone you liked on to talk about Assange once, but you can find people who do that kind of thing and are not supportive of U.S. empire, who are not supportive of colonial destruction, who are not supportive of capitalist destruction, who are not racist. And Tucker is racist in all ways. You can read some of his quotes that I'm not even willing to read here in the past. So he also, besides all of that, is a corporate Trumpian bootlicker. I mean, he licked the shoes of Donald Trump every day and twice on Sunday. So if you are left wing and you like Tucker Carlson, then you have to ask yourself why you are such a huge supporter of a racist corporate billionaire war criminal like Donald Trump. Or if Don Lemon on the other side, if you like Don Lemon, then you got to ask yourself why, he's a bootlicker of Joe Biden and Obama. So again, you got to ask yourself why you like someone who is a full-throated support of a racist corporate multi-millionaire rapist war criminal. On either side, you got to ask yourself that. And if you enjoy the segments that Tucker Carlson did once with someone who highlighted how Assange should be free, then you should just like that. Just say, I like that segment. Don't say you like Tucker Carlson because there's no, like, if a random dude on the street that you knew, or he had on a T-shirt that said, "Hi, I'm a 100-millionaire racist corporate shill, but I'd like to talk to you about how Julian Assange should be free." Would you bring him into your house and high five him and say, "This is the best guy I've ever seen"? I think you'd still be like, this guy seems like still a shithead. Tucker did multiple racist segments. He had segments on, how he just make up stuff about immigrants, how black people are committing all the crime. You can go watch plenty of segments on that shit. And, if you like that stuff, then you need to kind of dig into yourself and decide why you like racist content. So, just look deep inside and try and figure out why it is you like racist content. Now, someone is mentioning that Tucker has brought Jimmy Dore on many times, which that sounds good. He's brought on Glenn Greenwald. He's brought on other people that I've been a fan of their work at various times. So again, you can say you like that segment. Don't say you like Tucker Carlson because that you are supporting one of the worst human beings that has ever lived. No, not that has ever lived. He's not as bad as the war criminals actually making the decisions. But again, why? I don't understand why people want to lick the shoes of any of these fucking ruling elite creeps, whether it be Trump, Biden, Obama, any of them. Like, why? Or why would you want to lick the shoes of the guy who's promoting them? I mean, Tucker Carlson's day job was just to promote Donald Trump, right? Every second of every day. In fact, in the leaked text that just came out in that trial, it was Tucker Carlson saying he knew Trump was lying, but our viewers believe it, so I'm going to keep pretending it's true anyway. Which is, I mean, and I'm not even getting into Tucker Carlson applied to be in the CIA. Tucker Carlson back when he was on CNN for years and years, manufacturing consent for war before he turned against some wars. He's not against the military-industrial complex at all. He's just against the war in Ukraine. So, I don't know. Dig a little deeper, folks. Dig a little deeper. Because you need to really think about what these people stand for. You shouldn't just hear one good story you like and think that makes someone a good person. And then, of course, Don Lemon. I don't know if I really need to explain to you what a piece of shit he is. Also, it's like Don Lemon is a piece of shit for being a corporate stooge on CNN for so many years. But on top of that, all this stuff's coming up about him being a misogynist, treating women like shit. So it's like, even on other levels, Don Lemon is an awful human being. But yeah. Stephen wants to point out that we have all changed our minds. Yes, we can all change our minds, but these are current segments I'm referring to that Tucker Carlson regularly does. So I agree. If he had changed his mind from everything he used to believe, then that would be a different scenario. But that is not the case. All right. Well, I want to get to how peace continues to break out across the world, despite the fact that the U.S. is very upset about it. We are furious about all this peace that keeps breaking out behind our back. It really is quite a problem. But here's the latest one. Syria and Saudi Arabia have reconciled. Syria-Saudi relations leap forward with joint statements, bilateral meetings, and for the first time in 12 years, a shared vision for resolving the crisis in Syria. And you have to keep in mind that you don't have to believe like Assad is a great dude in order to want to see peace in Syria, because it will mean millions of people in Syria will have better lives if there were peace there, and if these gut-wrenching sanctions that the U.S. has been using to crush people there were not on Syria right now. It would change millions of lives overnight. And if you, just because you're like, well, Assad's bad, so I want every little child and infirmed and elderly person in Syria to suffer, then you gotta rethink that policy. I'd give that policy a look-see. The Saudis, for the first time since the Syrian war's onset, received Syria's foreign minister in Riyadh. Since 2012, the Saudis had taken the lead in regional and international efforts to arm Syrian opposition groups across the spectrum, including the Muslim Brotherhood, Salafists, and Al-Qaeda. Syria and its allies already had documented information about the role of Bandar bin Sultan in terror attacks on the Syrian capital between mid-2012 and 2013. The year-long campaign of intense bombing and armed assaults on Damascus did not succeed, and the alliance of states supporting Syrian militant groups began to acknowledge that regime change would not be as easy as anticipated. Yeah, so Saudi Arabia, along with the U.S., has been trying to create regime change in Syria for obviously years and years. And at times, things were so fucked there that at times the U.S. was funding and arming groups that were also fighting groups that were funded and armed by Saudi Arabia, our ally. There were also other times where the CIA was funding and arming groups that were fighting groups funded and armed by the Pentagon. So we're fighting ourselves over there. So anyway, that's what makes this peace even more remarkable, is that Saudi Arabia has been funding much of this war on Syria. The Saudi involvement in the north was revealed by then U.S. President Donald Trump in 2018 when he explicitly stated that Saudi Arabia was interested in his decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Syria, a decision he later abandoned, and that it must pay for the continuation of the occupation, which it did. So Donald Trump somehow got Saudi Arabia to pay more to continue the assault on Syria, which if that were the only reason the U.S. was doing it, that just makes us paid mercenaries. It just makes the U.S. empire, hey, you pay us some money and we'll destroy whatever country you want. Of course, there's other reasons the U.S. is doing it as well. But to me, the most important aspect of this article is that this is more peace happening behind the back of the U.S. The U.S. is furious that peace has broken out between Saudi Arabia and Iran, between Saudi Arabia and Syria. The war in Yemen is coming to an end. All of this has been facilitated by China, which means you also have a good relationship between Saudi Arabia and China and Syria and Iran. All of this, the U.S. has been working on a divide and conquer system for years in order to continue the U.S. empire and the power of the petrodollar. And all this peace breaking out is just terrible. We're furious. This peace keeps breaking out. And I'm going to give you another example right now. The U.S. balks at thriving UAE-Russia relations. United Arab Emirates and Russia have been uniting and working together. The leak of highly classified Pentagon documents, including reports of UAE's alleged intelligence collusion with Russia against the U.S. and U.K., has captured headlines regionally and globally. According to the U.S. intel reports, a document implicating the Russian Federal Security Service entitled Russia-UAE Intelligence Relations Deepening States. FSB officials claimed UAE security service officials in Russia had agreed to work together against U.S. and U.K. intelligence agencies, according to newly acquired Signals Intelligence. Again, more countries working together, and there's peace, there's alliance. It's terrible for the U.S. The fact that other countries, it's terrible. Let me rephrase that. It's terrible for the U.S. empire. It's not terrible for Americans, because the truth is that if our politicians and our so-called leaders were to care less about destroying other countries and focus all that time, energy, and money towards U.S. citizens, then you'd have a lot of people doing far better. You would not have a system where tens of millions are suffering under medical debt, for example. Tens of millions can't afford health care and don't go to the hospital because they know they can't afford it. So this is terrible for the U.S. empire and the power of the petrodollar, that all this peace, God damn it, peace just keeps breaking out. And you might get reports from mainstream media on some of this stuff, but they're not going to admit that peace is bad for the U.S. All right, we got a few minutes left. The rest of this live stream will be at, I got probably 10 to 15 minutes left. The rest of this will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there, and it is completely free to join.